following will contain spoilers to the Netflix film The Willoughbys. Hello again, folks. This is Dragon Videos reporting in, and this time I decided to do a movie review. Some of you have recalled my last review, which is Steven Universe the movie, and it's been a while since I've actually done one. So that's why I decided to do it. But I also picked this particular film because it was presented on Earth Day. So that is basically a special treat for all of you. The film I'm going to talk about is The Willoughbys. It's a movie that focuses on four siblings who sent their selfish parents on a trip to die for and then encounter their nanny. This is a movie that was based off of a book by Lois Lowry, which also focused on the same premise. One thing that you didn't know is that Lois Lowry is also the writer of this particular film. As I said before, the four siblings have to go up against their selfish parents. And let's just say they are the worst people in existence. You wouldn't believe what they do to their own children, but I'll talk about that later. Of course, this is all narrated through the eyes of a cat, and the narrator comes a little partial reluctant to get involved, but in the end, he definitely comes out as a big softy who has the fondness for the Willoughby children. So without further ado, let's begin the review. Okay, so the story begins with the introduction of a Willoughby couple. Their first kid was Tim. They didn't like Tim, and they made it abundantly clear with Jane and Barnaby A and Barnaby B that they were not interested in their children, and they had to stay out of their way on more than one occasion. They even had to get leftovers out of the deal. So Tim tries to be the adult of the family, which doesn't work out well and results in him being in a coal bin. So, we are learning a little bit more about the Barnabys, which have a capability of doing amazing inventions, as well as Jane's passion for singing, which she tries her best to do despite of her parents being huge butts about that. So, the trio decides to go and encounter a baby later in the rainy night. Tim was against that idea, and when the baby was discovered by the parents, they sent them out to get rid of him because babies are the most childish thing ever to raise. And this baby was a bounce in the wall. Let me tell you, she was definitely a very tricky one to take care of. So they drop her off at a factory, and then they head back home. There, Tim and Jane figure that maybe it was best that they were off on their own, that they were just better off being by themselves than being with their selfish parents. Tim was inquiring of how on earth they were going to do that. Jane, probably being the mom of the group, got a good idea about sending them off to a travel agency and putting them on the world's most dangerous places. With that, the parents packed up by those brochures and then took on a wild and crazy adventure, unbeknownst to the kids that they hired the nanny. The nanny comes off as a huge miracle when Jane and Tim were arguing what to do for breakfast. She's very upbeat and practically enjoys the company of the kids. She says she cooks, she cleans, and sings. She even presented them with oatmeal, which was so much better than whatever they got out of their parents. Along the way, the nanny learns a lot more about the kids and enjoys their company. It wins the Barnabys and Jane over. Tim, on the other hand, took a more while to convince. She even encounters General Melanoff, who runs the cacti factory that Ruth, the baby, was left behind in. They definitely get along, and even Tim begins to like the concept of the two being together. Slowly but surely, everyone started to accept the nanny, but Tim's horrible mistake resulted in everyone being split up, put into foster care, and the nanny being distraught. Tim soon fixed that with the help of the nanny, and they went over to the Swiss Alps, where basically the parents were, and they were freezing their fannies off at that point. Though technically it's the Himalayas, or otherwise known as Mount Everest, that's the most difficult place to climb. Anyway, the foursome go on their solo mission to get their parents back so they could get the child service people off their backs. Unfortunately, the parents were completely selfish and practically abandoned them in the middle of the snow. Thankfully, however, the nanny, Ruth, and Captain Melanoff soon find them, and they all began to accept the fact that the parents were not okay and that they were just being better off raised by the nanny and the candy maker because they were the only people in the entire world who actually cared for these kids and risked everything to get them back together. So, in the end, they definitely became the best family anyone could ask for. Overall, I enjoyed the plot of its story. It's straightforward and actually focuses on what it really means to be a family. And plus, there are some certain jokes that can make you really, really uncomfortable, but putting that aside, it was enjoyable. I also noticed that there's been a running theme of rainbows throughout the majority of this film. And yes, I know many of you would think gays as gay rights, since June will be crawling in sooner than you think, but the rainbows could also symbolize the sense of unity, the capability of being a family, being there for each other regardless of the ups and downs you have to face along the way, and that's life. And of course, the best crown jewel is the song I Choose You that Jang sang toward the end of the movie. This song represents what it means to love others, not just romantic love, but the familial love that helps bind people together and gives us hope on the end of the day that we'll always have people to love as well as love back. I like to take the time to bring out some of the best characters that this movie had to offer. One of them is the nanny, or Linda as she's called. You see, she definitely comes off as this bright, cheery person who accepts the kids immediately and enjoys their actual talents. She's just a very warm, considerate person compared to her parents, and she even comes off as a motherly figure. Well, the constant oatmeals aside, she really is something. I even loved her backstory about her being a foster kid. That alone was reminding me of an episode from God Friended Me, Season 2, about a guy named Noah, one of Miles' friend's suggestions that was trying to protect his daughter from going into the foster care system because he didn't have a very positive experience with it. He was bounced from one family to another. He was viewed as nothing more as a paycheck. To make matters worse, his wife died, and he was going to prison for a crime he didn't commit. So yeah, his situation basically sucked to a T. Putting that aside, the nanny really knows how to level up with the kids, especially Tim, and helping him cope with the changes that came along with them and heighten his self-esteem. Speaking of which, both Jane and Tim really are good children. Tim is like the oldest of the two and tries to take charge of everything and making sure the kids get in line. While with Jane, she's practically the reasonable one of the group. She knows that there's something wrong and tries to take action and looks at all the possibilities before they go into action. And of course, with Tim, it's understandable why he's so resistant to change. He's been dealing with customs and traditions all his life, and being the oldest, he has to deal with those expectations and the concept of being a good family man to the rest of the crew. And of course, they're probably the closest thing to being adults. They take responsibility for what they've done, and they do try their best to keep the Barnaby safe as well as their own safety. Plus, they are basically the only ones that actually care what happens to them. And also, recognizing their own faults and taking responsibility, unlike the parents, again. And of course, the Barnaby twins. I do like their inventive stuff, but I wish they had a little bit more individualism. And now for the loathing characters. For some of you who have heard me say this earlier, I loathe the parents, and for good reason. They're just a bunch of idiots, very selfish people, and you should have seen of how they reacted on a brochure. They freaked out over a freaking brochure. The assholes decided to sell the house without even considering the consequences, and of course practically leave the children with a nanny, which is basically the half-decent thing they've ever done. And my biggest issue was when they were left alone. Don't worry, folks, Jaws really took care of those assholes pretty quick. As for the service care people, I did wish they weren't like completely stupid. I mean, seriously, oatmeal is fine, but could you feed them something else, please? So overall, aside from my ranting about the characters, I loved this movie. I loved its charm. I loved of how they did some textualization, not only as a 3D and 2D deal, but they also made it look like everything is realistic through texture, and it shows a lot of imagination and a simple story that people can follow without getting confused along the way. And I would really recommend this movie as a good family film to watch whenever possible on Netflix. Okay, folks, this is Dragon Videos wrapping it up for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want me to do any more reviews about this, please let me know. I could do Disney, I can do some anime, but I hope that you enjoy this, and please send a like, comment. Thank you for watching.